This happened many years ago now, but it's something that I will never forget. It was in the early 2000s, and at the time I was a young single mother with two sons aged 7 and 4. There was a new video game system that my sons had been talking about all year, mainly my older son. I was planning to get it for them for Christmas, but I didn't have a whole lot of money to spend. For Black Friday, the local Walmart was having a huge sale, and the video game system was one of the things that was on sale. I knew that it was a great opportunity for me to buy it, and I made plans to go to Walmart. So for Thanksgiving, we stayed at my parents' house, and that allowed me to get up early and go shopping by myself the next day. Walmart opened at 6 a.m. that year on Black Friday, I believe, so I got up before the crack of dawn and drove there. When I arrived, the store had not opened yet, and it was still completely dark outside. However, the parking lot was packed, and I had to park sort of at the back of it. There were people lined up outside the store and walking to the front from the parking lot. I had never seen it like this before. I walked up to the store and got as close as I could, but I was still behind a bunch of people in line. I had only got there about 5 minutes before they opened. Camping out in a tent overnight or something like that wasn't really an option for me. I hoped that I would still have enough time to get the video games, and I felt confident about it. Soon enough, I remember hearing the crowd cheer and the doors opened. I watched countless people run inside the store and inched closer with the people that I was near. About a minute went by before I was able to enter. By the time I got inside the store, there were literally people everywhere. I remember that the electronics department was at the back of the store, so I tried to walk as quick as I could, but there were so many people that it took forever. By the time I made it there, I looked around for the video games. Unfortunately, they were gone. I looked around the electronics department for at least 10 or 20 minutes. I was just hoping that I would find it or that there would be one somewhere, but it seemed as though it had sold out. Finally, there was an employee available to talk to, and he told me that they didn't have any left. I was very disappointed. I decided to try another store to see if maybe they had a similar deal. I hadn't really looked in all the advertisements in the paper the day before because I had been banking on Walmart to work out. I was surprised just how fast the video games sold. So I left the Walmart store and the mob of people. I walked through the parking lot back to my car. However, when I got near it, I saw something strange. There was a guy with a large SUV and the back of it was open. He was standing there selling electronics out of the back of his car. He was parked at the way back of the parking lot, kind of in the corner where there was actually a little bit of space. I saw a couple of people standing around and talking to him, but there wasn't like a crowd or anything. When I realized this, it seemed kind of shady, but I thought that maybe there was a chance he had the video games that I wanted to buy. So I walked over to him. When I approached, I saw mostly other electronics, but I did see a few video games. When I walked up, he told me that he had stuff cheaper than they were selling inside. I asked him if he had any of the video game systems that I was looking for. He looked in the back of his SUV for a moment, which had a lot of stuff in it. There were boxes and wires and all kinds of stuff back there. He told me that he didn't have any with him at the moment, but he said that he did have some back at his shop, which was not far away. Now, the whole thing seemed sketchy, like I said. I didn't think this guy was supposed to be selling stuff, and Walmart would probably shut him down or call the cops on him. But I was angry for missing out after waking up at 6 a.m., so I didn't really care in the moment. I asked the guy where his shop was and what it was called. He said that it was his place, and he said that he would take me there quick. I was surprised to hear that. I thought maybe he would go back there and come back. I said that I could go to my car and just follow him, but he said no. He said that we could go there quick, and it was just down the road, and then he would drive me back to Walmart. The guy was bald, sort of strong looking, and had a bit of a beard. I told him okay, and then I went around and got into his car. This was a stupid idea to begin with, but at the moment it didn't seem that bad. The man got into the driver's seat and then started driving. He left the Walmart parking lot and turned onto a dark and quiet road. I told the man how crazy it was inside the store and how I really wanted to get the video games for my son. He said that he had several gaming systems and he would sell it to me for cheaper than the sale at Walmart. Aside from it seeming really sketchy, the guy did seem pretty nice. Things then went quiet in the car for the most part. He drove down that road and then turned. It was still dark out and I wasn't quite sure exactly where we were going. After we were driving down that road for at least more than 5 minutes, I started to get nervous. The guy made it sound like his shop wasn't that far away. After driving down the road for a while, he turned again. Then we went down that road for at least another 5 minutes. I no longer knew where we were anymore. I asked the guy how much farther away his place was. He just said that it wasn't much farther. Then he turned on this one road that was even quieter. I was getting a bad feeling that I should not have gotten into the car with the guy. We drove down this really quiet road for at least another 10 minutes. Now we were driving for close to half an hour. At that point, I just wanted to get out of there. Nobody was saying anything. I sensed a change in the guy's overall personality. I was now afraid to say anything. I felt like if I asked again, he would tell me that he was kidnapping me or something. The guy now almost seemed to be angry. We kept driving and came up to a red light. That was just what I wanted to see. It was this quiet intersection and there were really no other cars on the road. The area was more rural here, with woods off in the distance. As soon as the man stopped at the red light, I just grabbed the door handle. Thankfully, it opened. I jumped out of the guy's truck and just ran for it. He did not try to stop me. I went to the right in the intersection and noticed this small little gas station down the road. I saw the man's truck go straight, driving away from me. I went to the gas station and went inside. There I called my parents, who were able to come and get me. When they heard about what happened, they were just glad that I was okay. My parents and I ended up buying the video games for my son together that year at a higher price from another store. So I guess it all worked out, but I'm really glad that I got out of that guy's car when I did. I'm not sure where we were going. I should have never gotten the car to begin with. That guy was already being sketchy for selling stuff out of the back of his car in a Walmart parking lot. I used to work at a popular clothing store years ago. I worked there for a couple years and enjoyed it. Most of the time we would not be that busy. The store was pretty large and spread out. The weekends would often bring in a lot of people, but we could handle it. Black Friday was always the busiest day of the year though, by far. Most of the employees were scheduled to work on Black Friday every year. I was no exception when I worked there, and I remember the first one that I worked. We opened early at like 6 a.m., and from the start there were lots of people in the store. We didn't have that many registers to begin with, but they were all open. Still, despite this, there was a long line of people waiting to check out for most of the time. I normally was not a cashier and I would work around the store, but on this Black Friday I was needed at the checkouts and I worked as a cashier. This went on for probably the first 4 or 5 hours of my shift. Then finally I was off the checkouts and I was moved to working around the store. I would help customers keep things clean and organized in certain areas and things like that. I remember that I was sort of in the back end of the store and I was somewhat close to winter coats, hats, and gloves, that sort of stuff. This area of the store was probably the quietest and there wasn't that many people over there. As I was over there, I saw this man who was shopping in that section. I looked over right as he was putting a black ski mask over his head. At first, I thought that he was just trying it on, and it was one of the ski masks that we sold. But then I saw him rip off the tag, and he did not take the mask off. I thought that was weird, but still, I didn't want to go up to him and ask him what he was doing or anything. I was busy folding clothes on a display table that had been messed up. The guy was also not really that close to me. Not long after, though, I looked back and he was gone. I didn't think too much of it because Black Friday can be crazy. I quickly forgot about him for the most part. And a few minutes later, it was time for my break. So I headed over to the break room that we had, which happened to be at the back end of the store. Past one of the customer service desks, there was a few hallways and back rooms. The break room was one of them. I went in there and there were a few other employees in as well, maybe 2 or 3. Usually when I worked, there wouldn't be any, maybe one other person on break at the same time as me. I didn't know any of the employees very well that were on their break at that moment, so I just sat down at a table by myself, sort of at the front of the room. It was pretty quiet in there. Nobody was talking, and there were just a few tables and chairs, a refrigerator, and then a TV in the break room. Less than 5 minutes into my break, though, somebody suddenly entered the break room. It was the same man who I had seen earlier. I instantly recognized him because he was still wearing the ski mask. After entering the break room, the man yelled out, "Someone take me to the safe now." Everyone looked up but didn't say a word. I was thinking that it might be a joke, but I was also pretty creeped out by this. After nobody said anything for like 10 seconds, the man repeated himself. Someone behind me said that they didn't know where the safe was. He then demanded a manager. After a few seconds pause, the person behind me said nobody in the break room was a manager. The man then walked over, and I happened to be the one sitting closest to him. He grabbed my arm and made me stand up. The guy then told me that I was going to take him to the safe. I tried to pull away from him, but he had a strong grip on my arm. When I did, he claimed that he had weapons on him. I didn't see anything, but I didn't know for sure. He was much larger than I, a barely 5-foot tall woman. The man practically dragged me out of the room and into another hallway. There were a few other hallways down there, as it was the back area of the store. No one else was in the immediate vicinity. The man told me again to tell him where the safe was, claiming that he knew we had one. Now, being 100% honest, I truly had no idea where our safe was. I didn't even know for sure if we even had one in the store. I'm guessing we did, but I never cared to know anything about it. I told the man I didn't know, and he yelled at me, claiming that I did. He seemed to think that I was a manager for some reason, and I didn't know why, because I wasn't. I was terrified. In that moment, I wished that I did know where it was so that the guy wouldn't hurt me, and I could just tell him where it was and he would leave. I wanted him to leave us alone. We walked up and down a few hallways over there with no luck. He was looking for it and kept asking me where it was, but my guess was as good as his. I told him maybe it was at the front of the store, which made him mad. He said that was just a ploy to get him out. I said there was no ploy, but the man was seeming to get panicked. He seemed to really believe that one of us back there would lead him to the store safe. I'm not sure where he got his information from. We started going to random doors in the back rooms of the store that were open. Nothing led to a safe. After what felt like a long time of wandering around the back with this guy, he walked towards an exit. Then he let go of me, ran to the door, and opened it. This was not a commonly used exit at all, so he was leaving the store to a back alley type of area. After he was gone and the door swung shut, I felt a huge amount of relief. I ran back to the break room and told everyone to call the police, which they already had. A bunch of people were coming up and asking if I was okay. I was surprised at how fast the word traveled. Within minutes, the whole store basically got shut down. There were tons of cops there, and I answered a bunch of questions from them. The man ended up being located later on in the day. I was sent home early, and our store was only closed for about an hour before opening again. That was by far my craziest Black Friday experience. This happened on Black Friday in 2008. At the time, I was a few years out of college and was working my first real job. I finally had a little bit of money in my bank account, and I was excited to go Black Friday shopping. In particular, I wanted to go to Best Buy, which was the best place to get electronics back then. They were having a really big sale. It was like pretty much everything was on sale and had a big discount. I had gone Black Friday shopping in the past and always enjoyed it, but on this year, I took it more serious. Most of my electronics were really old, and I had them since college or even high school. Some of my stuff was even from the 90s, so I was planning to get a ton of new things. A TV, new laptop, maybe an iPod, which were a newer thing back then. My best friend Riley, who I had known since we were kids, was kind of in the same situation as me. Riley had recently got a new apartment as well, so we were going to go shopping together. We planned to actually camp outside of Best Buy to try to be one of the first people for the sale. I had remembered years previous that people had done this, and I always thought that they were crazy, but now it seemed like it might be fun. On Thanksgiving night, I met up with Riley and we headed to the Best Buy. I believe that they opened at 5 a.m. the next morning, so it wouldn't be too long of a night. But it was fairly cold out with it being late November. We bundled up and I had brought a tent and sleeping bags as well. When we got to the Best Buy, there were a few people already there. I saw a few other tents and people sitting in chairs they had brought and stuff. One guy brought a TV and a portable generator or something, and several people were watching it. Riley and I were maybe the 30th people or so to get there, and people continued to arrive after us. We got in line and it was maybe 7 p.m., so we had about 10 hours to go. Quickly, the line got longer behind us. There was a fence divider on the sidewalk out front of the store, so the line was pretty organized. For the first few hours, Riley and I talked with each other, as well as some of the people around us. We got to know them a little bit, and talked about the things that we were excited to buy. Most of the people seemed pretty nice. By about 10 p.m. we were getting cold and tired. We decided to try to get some sleep, so we got inside the tent and in our sleeping bags. Some other people nearby went in their tents as well, and things got pretty quiet. Surprisingly, I fell asleep pretty quick. I'd been worried that I wouldn't be able to get any sleep at all. However, at some point in the night, I was awoken. At first, I was a little dazed and confused, but I quickly remembered where I was and why I was in a tent. Then I heard the sound of the tent being unzipped. I did not know why this was happening. I looked over and Riley was still in the tent and was sleeping. Then I saw right in front of me the tent start to open. This creepy guy started looking in. He was looking right at me and had a gross-looking beard and messy hair. It really freaked me out. He stopped and then was just staring at me. After a few seconds, I was finally able to speak. I asked him who he was. He said nothing, but just kept staring at me. It was really weird. I sat up and the guy quickly closed the tent and moved away. I was glad that he was gone. I reached over and opened the tent and looked outside. I couldn't see him anywhere. He must have walked away. So I closed the tent and then tried to fall back asleep. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. We had our alarm set for 4, which was an hour before the store opened. I thought that maybe the guy was trying to cut the line, because we had seen the people around us and he wasn't one of them. I had no idea where he had come from. I was somehow able to fall back asleep, and then woke up at 4 to our alarm. Riley and I both got up, packed up the tent, and then waited the final hour. It was crazy to leave the tent and now see more people around. And in the final hour, a bunch more cars entered the parking lot, and the line got even longer. There was now a huge crowd outside. I talked to Riley about the guy in the tent. We both just laughed it off, even though I had been really creeped out in the moment, and I was still kind of creeped out thinking back to it. I looked around and didn't see the guy anywhere. I knew that I would remember that face. I couldn't get it out of my head. It was so creepy. At last, the store opened. Everybody rushed inside, but it wasn't that crazy. Things were pretty civilized. There was no pushing or shoving or anything, at least not that I saw. Riley and I quickly made our way to the items that we wanted. Before we knew it, the store became extremely busy. Between employees, security people, and mostly customers, it was packed. We walked around getting the things that we wanted. After being inside the store for maybe 20 minutes, I saw him. The same guy who I had seen at the tent. He was kind of far away, but I knew that it was him. I pointed him out to Riley and we talked about what happened again. The man was near the front of the store and he didn't really seem to be looking at anything. He was just kind of standing there and looking around. Then he looked over and we made eye contact with him. I quickly looked away and Riley and I moved. We shopped around a little bit more and we both got pretty much everything that we wanted to and then some. Then we went to the front of the store and checked out. When we were waiting in line to check out, I looked for the man again, but did not see him. I was glad that I didn't see him anymore. He very well could have still been there because the store was still packed, but I didn't see him and so I didn't really care. After we checked out, we left, and then we actually went to Target and Walmart for fun. Those stores were both really busy, and I don't really remember if we got anything or not, but I just remember that we went there. We then went to a local mall for a little while before going home. I dropped Riley off, and then I went back to my apartment. I was tired from getting only a few hours of sleep in a tent, and I took a nice nap. Then I got up and started setting up some of my electronics. Now, that night I was up in my apartment just relaxing. I was watching my new TV and setting up my new computer. Obviously it was Friday, so I had no work the following day. Plus I had taken a nap, so I was up late. At a little after midnight, I remember that I noticed something out of the corner of my eye from the window. My apartment was on the second floor of the building. I remembered that it looked out to the parking lot. At this time of night, it would be very quiet. However, I had seen someone walking. For whatever reason, I noticed. I looked over, and there he was again, that same guy. The man who had opened our tent, and the man who I had seen in Best Buy. He was just standing in the parking lot and staring up at me. It sent a chill down my spine. I instantly got up and closed all the blinds and covered all the windows. I was so creeped out that I was too scared to look out of them again. I had lived in that apartment for multiple years and had never seen the guy. I didn't think that he lived there. After a while, I looked again. He was gone. The guy was nowhere in sight, and I was afraid that he might be in the building. My doors were locked, but luckily nothing else happened. I never saw him again after that or anything. I still don't know how or why he went to my apartment. It was the craziest thing. I will never forget that creepy man's stare. I was working at Target on Black Friday 2 years in a row. I worked at Target when I was a young woman aged 19 to 21. This was a while ago now, and I recall that we opened at 6 p.m. on Thanksgiving night. I remember when I first heard that, I thought they were crazy. Nobody wants to work on Thanksgiving, and I didn't think that people wanted to go shopping on Thanksgiving either. They should be with their families. I remember that beforehand I said that, and my manager said that we would all spend time with our work family. I thought that was cheesy, but to be honest, it did end up being kind of fun working on Thanksgiving. Plus, I got paid time and a half. The first year went pretty smooth. We had tons of employees working, and I was at the checkouts most of the time as a cashier. The second year, I knew more of what to expect. I was working basically almost an overnight shift this time, from 6 p.m. to 3 a.m. We stayed open all night, and 3 a.m. was a really weird time to get off, as I had only worked until midnight the previous year. I wondered how busy the store would be in those overnight hours. And spoiler alert, it was busy. Very busy. I remember all of us cashiers got to our check lanes before the store opened at 6 p.m. We were using every single lane, and I mean every one. From the time we opened at 6 o'clock, I saw the large crowd of people enter the store. Some of them were even running. Very quickly, people mostly went to the electronics department, and before long, there were customers entering all the checkout lines, including my own. I got busy ringing up customer after customer. It went by pretty fast just because of how busy we were. I remember that at one point, a sort of distinct-looking man came to my checkout. I don't remember what he got, but he had glasses, short dark hair, and was wearing a blue jacket. Things went normal, and I only remembered him because he checked out in my line again like an hour later. I was like, wait, didn't this guy check out in my line before? I didn't say anything though, and soon he was gone again. As I kept working, soon it got later and later. The store remained just as busy as people were literally everywhere. It was a steady flow of people through my checkout. Then, maybe 2 hours later, the man was in my line again. I remember he asked me how my night was going and what time I got off. I dismissed it as friendly chit-chat and answered him. I mentioned how I had seen him before, and he simply said something like, I have a lot of shopping to do. I was just like, oh, okay, but I didn't think until later how it didn't make much sense. Why not get all the stuff at once? And why was he always in my line as there were literally almost 30 others to choose from? Soon though, I sort of forgot about it as I checked out other customers. Then it was time for my break. I went to the front of the store and through the employees-only doors towards the break room. There was a number of other people in there, including my best friend at work, another girl named Kayla who was around my age. I sat next to her and talked with her about how her shift was going. Kayla was not a cashier, but worked in the sales floor mainly in soft lines. She told me that it was crazy out on the floor. Then she said that there was this creepy guy who she had reported. Apparently, a guy came up to her and started talking to her, asking her where stuff was. She helped him at first, but then he started asking her weird questions and wouldn't let her go away. He kept asking her stuff and sort of following her around. His questions got inappropriate, and she went over to a manager and reported the guy. She said that when she went to report him, he ran away, and was not sure if he had left the store or if he was still in there. It was hard to know because the store was literally packed, and targets are also pretty large. I felt bad for Kayla to deal with such a creep. It reminded me of the man I kept seeing in the check lane. When I told her about him, we asked each other what the guy looked like, and we realized that it was the same guy. I now felt even more weirded out by this man. I hoped that I would not see him again, and that he would not go through my line anymore. Soon after, I went back out, as well as Kayla. I only had a few hours left, as did she. So I continued with checking out customers. About another hour later, I saw the man once more. He was in my line, but it wasn't his turn yet. I was at a different check lane now, but here he was, in my line once again. As soon as I saw him, our eyes locked for a moment. He must have sensed the different look on my face now that I knew he was a creep. I thought that the managers might be looking for him after he harassed Kayla. So I took out my walkie and I radioed in, "Can I get a GSTL to check lane 20? As soon as I said that, I saw the guy leave his place in line and start quickly walking away. By the time the manager got to me, the guy was long gone. I reported what happened, and the manager was trying to find the guy, but obviously had 100 other things to do as well. It was a crazy night with all the shoppers. There was shoplifting to worry about and just general tasks. And any other night, this guy would have been kicked out of the store already. My manager said that he would look for the guy and walked off in the direction that he went. I hoped that he would find him, but I didn't get my hopes up too much. I was just glad that he was out of my line, and I continued with my work. For the last few hours of my shift, I didn't see the guy. The store stayed very busy into the wee hours of the morning. At 3 a.m., the store was still packed, which was a crazy sight. I was finally done though, and I went up, clocked out, and then left. I started walking to my car at the back end of the parking lot. As I was about halfway there, I noticed a car come up behind me driving the same way that I was walking. I moved over to let it pass. When I did, the car did not go past me as I had expected, so I turned around and looked at it. When I did, my jaw about dropped as I saw the same creepy man behind the wheel. It was this old beat-up car, and the guy was staring at me through those big glasses. I walked faster and hurried to get to my car. When I got there, I went inside and locked the doors and felt a little safer. But the man in his car drove up and parked in a spot like 2 spaces away from me. I realized then that he was probably waiting for me to leave. Then what would happen? Would he follow me? I figured that he probably would, so I decided not to leave just yet. We both sat in our cars for like 5 minutes. I was on my phone texting Kayla as well as the Target group chat. I told them about the creepy guy, but Kayla didn't respond right away because she was still working. Not knowing what else to do, I decided to go back in the store. I got out of my car and then quickly walked towards the entrance. The man did not get out of his car or follow me. He stayed there. I went inside Target, just walked around for a while, and talked to a few coworkers. Then I came across my coworker David, who was a cart attendant. He was helping a customer with the TV, and when he heard about the guy, he said that he would come out and see what his problem was. David was a big guy, and as a cart attendant, he worked out in the parking lot all the time. So after he finished helping a customer, he left the store with me. We both walked out to my car, and the man was still there waiting for me to leave. David made a beeline going straight for him. He walked right up to the guy's driver's window and knocked on it. I saw the man in the car look super uncomfortable. David was basically pounding on the guy's window, demanding he roll it down. I remember David was calling him a scumbag and stuff. He was like, "Hey scumbag, roll down your window, I gotta talk to you." When the insults started, the man went into action. The guy quickly put his car into drive and just sped away, quickly leaving the Target. I was glad that he was gone. David was like, "I don't know why he didn't want to talk to me." I thanked him for his help, and then I left and went home. I never saw that guy again, but it still creeps me out knowing that he might have followed me home. Earlier in the night, I had told him what time I was getting off that night and things like that. I hadn't known that the man was acting creepy towards Kayla and maybe even others. Overall, that was the craziest Black Friday that I worked at Target. This happened back on Thanksgiving night of 2013. This was back when I was 18 years old and living with my parents. We were hosting Thanksgiving at our house, and we lived in a pretty good neighborhood. One thing that was interesting, though, is that we lived less than a mile from a local shopping area. At the end of the neighborhood, there was a busier street, and if you walked down it on the sidewalk, soon that entered an area with a bunch of stores. There was a Target, Walmart, Best Buy, and all that stuff. So this was a year where a lot of stores were actually opening on Thanksgiving night. I didn't have plans to go shopping until maybe the next day on Black Friday. I was really just enjoying Thanksgiving with my family and hanging out watching football and stuff. There was a lot of people at our house, like grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins. One of my cousins, Jake, who I'm close with in age, was probably the cousin that I hung out with the most at the time. We talked a lot during that Thanksgiving. I remember that he had the idea to walk down to the store after dinner and see how the shopping was going. At first, I was like, nah, but he said that it would be fun. He told me just how crazy things would get on Black Friday, and he had gone shopping in the past on Black Friday and said that it was fun. So soon, he had convinced me. It sounded interesting to see what the buzz was all about. The plan was to walk there and only be gone for a little while. So Jake and I left at maybe 6:30 or so. We walked down the sidewalk to the local shopping center, which only took about 15 minutes or so. I remember that when we approached, it was crazy. There were cars and people everywhere. Particularly the Target and Walmart were extremely busy. We got there, and at first we were just walking by. One of the first things we noticed was that there was a bunch of cop cars at the Walmart and the lights were flashing. We were obviously curious as to what happened, but also figured we better stay away. So we walked down to the Target and went inside and just walked around for a bit. It was pretty crazy, a lot more so than I would have expected. We didn't get anything, and a short time later we decided to head back. When we left, there were less police cars at the Walmart, but still a few of them. At that point, we walked back home and were gone for maybe an hour total. After getting back, we just continued hanging out with the rest of the family. We were in the living room watching football and talking and stuff. Around 8 o'clock, some people started leaving. By 9 o'clock, about half the people were there, but still only a few. I remember that it was late in the football game when one of my uncles who was standing by the window said, "There's a guy walking around your backyard." Our backyard was not that big, but fenced in and had several trees and bushes in it. My dad got up and walked over to the window, and I did as well. When we got there, we saw that there was this guy sort of at the back near the fence. He was walking behind a row of trees and heading towards the back corner. It looked suspicious right away, as none of us knew him. He was wearing jeans, a gray sweatshirt with the hood concealing most of his head, and he also had a backpack strung over his shoulder. I thought that maybe he was going to go out of our yard and then into the neighbor's backyard, but instead he turned and started walking towards our house. He was just barely within our view, and he did not look at us, so I don't think he noticed us at the window. He kept walking, and soon we couldn't see him anymore. He was over towards the other end of the house, so we moved over there. My dad decided to go into the backyard and tell the guy to leave. So we went over to the door and opened it. He walked out and looked around, and I went outside behind him. I heard someone quickly moving away from the backyard towards the other side of the house. I heard the leaves on the ground moving, but we didn't see the guy as that part was out of view. He seemed to go around to the side of the house towards the front and was probably leaving. My dad yelled for whoever he was to get out of our yard. We stopped hearing the guy, so we walked around to that side of the house. We still didn't see anything, and we didn't see the guy walking off into other people's yards or down the street either. It was strange, but we figured that he was gone, and we went back inside the house. It was probably like 20 minutes later, there was a knock on our front door. There was a police officer there. He asked us if we had heard anything strange or unusual. We immediately told him about the man. The officer said that he would look around, and within minutes we saw another police car get there. Then they found the same guy who we had seen still hiding in our yard. The guy was next to the house behind a bush. They arrested him, and it turned out that he had never left, even though we thought he did. The man had robbed the Walmart on Black Friday and assaulted 2 people. That's why we saw all the cop cars there. He fled the scene and ran all the way to our neighborhood and ultimately to our yard. I'm glad that the cops looked there. We had no idea that he was still in our yard. We thought that he had left, when in reality, he just hid out of our sight. This happened back in the year 2007. It was Black Friday, and I had been excited to go shopping. On Thanksgiving, I was looking at all the advertisements. Black Friday had become a tradition for me to go shopping and buy stuff. I wasn't that crazy about it where I would fight people to be first in line, but I enjoyed getting good deals if I could. Back then, I was pretty big into gaming, so I planned on going to GameStop at some point. So I woke up early that morning, and my first stop was Circuit City, where I bought a new TV. Then I went to a couple of other stores before winding up at GameStop. There wasn't a specific deal that I wanted to get there, but I was more so just looking around. The GameStop that I went to was located next to a bunch of other stores in a common shopping area. However, it was kind of on the end. When I got to the GameStop, it was very busy. If you've been to a GameStop, you know that there's not that much space to begin with. The stores are generally pretty small, and this one was like most. People were all over the place, and it was kind of hard to get around in there. I was just browsing, looking at the deals sort of near the back. I had been there for maybe 10 minutes when I heard a commotion at the front of the store. I wasn't really paying attention until I heard yelling. I looked over and just about everybody in the store was looking towards the front. By the counter, there was a GameStop employee yelling at a guy to get out of the store. The man was tall, thin, with long hair and glasses. He was not backing down as the GameStop employee was yelling over and over. He kept saying, "Get out of my store, now!" The guy would not leave though, and he was saying stuff back to the guy, but I couldn't hear it. I could only really hear the employee yelling because he was yelling super loud. I heard him threaten to call the cops and stuff. Some other customers tried to get between them, and it was pretty intense. People were saying to the guy to cool off and just leave, and they were also trying to calm down the GameStop employee, who I think was a manager. Finally, the guy turned and stormed out of the GameStop. He was stomping his feet along the way, and then when he left, he slammed the door super hard. But then the crazy part is that he opened the door back up again like 2 seconds after slamming it. As soon as he did, the GameStop employee screamed at him to get out again. But after he said that, the man in the doorway yelled that he would be back. Then he slammed the door again. After that, the place was dead silent for like 10 seconds. You could hear a pin drop. Then, finally, things resumed, and everybody went back to shopping again. I was there for probably another 20 minutes. I found a few things that I wanted to buy, and so then I got in line and waited. Eventually, I bought the games and was about to leave. Literally as I was walking to the door, I saw that same angry customer approaching from the parking lot. I felt like I better back up and get out of his way, so I didn't leave the store immediately. Instead, I stopped and waited. The next thing I knew, I saw the guy take what looked like a hatchet and start swinging it at the door. He hit it a few times and everybody looked over. The window started to break and then it was smashed. The man then went over to the window next to it and swung it at that a bunch of times. Those windows were smashed as well. It was extremely loud and everybody watched in shock. The man then turned and walked off, leaving the scene. We all then looked at the store manager, and the look on his face was pure disbelief. Finally, some people said that they were calling the cops and stuff. Nobody was hurt or anything, thankfully. The cops got there fast, and I remember that the guy ended up being caught not long after. The GameStop had to close for like a week. It was a crazy situation. I'm really glad that I didn't leave right away and run into the guy as he went on his rampage. Who knows what could have happened? I'm not even sure what his dispute with the GameStop manager was about. I heard at one point that he was unhappy about how much in-store credit he was getting for a game he sold them. I don't know if that's true though, but that was a bad way to take out his anger. This is the craziest experience that I ever had shopping on Black Friday. For many years, starting in the 2000s, it became a tradition for me to go shopping on Black Friday. It started when I was a kid going with my mom, and it would be a mother-daughter shopping day. The sales seemed to get crazier and crazier, and we would go earlier and earlier. Then I remembered that they started opening stores on Thanksgiving Day. We never did that until 2014 when I wanted to go shopping that night. I wanted to go by myself because I wanted to get a Christmas gift for my mom. There was some other stuff that I wanted to get as well, but that was the main reason. So that Thanksgiving, I left my parents' house to go to Target, which was opening at 6 p.m. I drove there and arrived a little bit after 6, maybe 6:15. I didn't think there was a need to wait in line or to get there right at 6 o'clock. If I didn't get something because of that little bit of time, then I didn't care too much. However, the store was much crazier than I expected. The parking lot was almost completely full, but when I got in the store, it was way worse. There were people everywhere, and I mean everywhere. It was basically a giant mob of people every direction that you looked. Whether you went left, right, forward, or back, you were going to be running into someone. It was impossible to go to any part of the store with any kind of speed. You could only go at the pace of the mob. It was like being in a wave in the ocean. The herd of people would just take you along. If you wanted to go against it, it would be nearly impossible. I got swept up by the mob and taken towards electronics, which is where I was going anyways. But that's where everybody else was going too. Eventually, I made it there and tried to separate myself from the giant crowd of people. I fought my way out of it to where it was slightly less busy. I started fighting my way to look for the things that I wanted. I was looking around the electronics area, having a hard time finding things, probably because of how many people there were. After I was over there for maybe 10 minutes, I remember that this Target employee approached me. He asked if he could help me, and I said I didn't know because it was so busy. I told him what I was trying to find, and I remember that he was struggling to hear me because of how crazy it was. It was pretty loud. I remember that he told me to follow him, and he started walking along the edge of the store along the wall. I followed him, and he quickly went through these 2 swinging doors that went into the employees only area. I wasn't sure if I was supposed to follow him there, but he waved me in. I went in there, and it was crazy to see how different it was back there. We were in this back room with a bunch of high shelves and concrete floors. It was much quieter. The guy said that it was easier to talk back there, and it was. He asked me again what I was looking for, and I told him. He said that he was going to help me out, and said that they might have a few in the back. Then he started walking down the narrow walkway, and I followed him. I was wondering why I was seemingly getting special treatment, and it seemed sort of strange. We walked down there and then took a left to this sort of back aisle. I saw him take out his cell phone as he was walking, and he started talking into it, but I couldn't really hear him. He was talking pretty quiet. Then we got to the end of that aisle there. At the back of it was a wall, and on that wall was a door leading to outside. There were a bunch of random boxes and stuff lying around as well. The man then stood there, and we were both just standing there for a few seconds. I was starting to get confused. The guy took out his phone and was looking at it. This was starting to seem wrong, but I didn't really know what to do. Then, out of nowhere, I heard a voice behind us. I looked back and saw another Target employee. He said, "Who are you guys, and what are you doing back here?" I was really confused. Then I heard the door open behind me. I looked and saw the guy who had been helping me open the door for the back room to go outside. He sprinted out, and before the door swung shut, I saw him jump into the back seat of this car. Then the car screeched away, and the door slowly closed. I turned back around super confused, and the Target employee asked me what I was doing back there and who that guy was. I told him what happened. The guy told me that the other guy did not work at Target. He was dressed as an employee, but was impersonating one. The man told me that he saw that his uniform was off and saw him going into the back room with me. That's why he went in to confront us. Then we went back out to the crazy area of Target. I was really weirded out by the whole thing and left and went back to my parents. I couldn't stop thinking about how crazy that was. When I thought about it more, I realized the man might have been trying to kidnap me or something. Maybe he was communicating on his phone with the people who were driving the car, and he was planning to take me out the door and shove me into the car and then drive away. He certainly wasn't actually trying to help me. I'm glad that the other Target worker was there and noticed us. I used to work at a mall as a maintenance worker many years ago. The mall was pretty large and had lots of stores in it. Back in the year 1999, we were expecting to be very busy for Black Friday. The mall was closed on Thanksgiving and opened early at 7 a.m. the day after. I worked Wednesday night until past close, which was at 9 p.m. So I was working late Wednesday, making sure that things were good for the big day on Friday. I recall that I had Thanksgiving off, but was working early on Friday. I started at 5 a.m., 2 hours before we opened. When I got to work that morning, it was still dark out and hardly anybody was there yet, but there were a few people lined up outside waiting for us to open, which I thought was crazy. I entered the mall and things were dark and quiet. There were a few other people there, but not many, and they were other workers who were spread out. I was kind of by myself in an area. I was doing some work when I thought I heard a noise of somebody walking nearby. I was not aware of anybody else in that immediate area, but assumed it to be a coworker. However, it was weird because I heard the footsteps again, and they were kind of around a corner in an employees-only hallway. This hallway had maintenance stuff in it, and I was really the only person who used it. Curious as to who was there, I called out asking, but there was no response. It seemed strange. So I stopped what I was doing and started to walk over there. Now it was completely silent and I heard nothing. I walked into the hallway, which was very dark. I went into a room which was empty and saw nothing there. Then I continued down the hallway. There was another room which was empty. Then there was this maintenance closet, and I saw that the door was ever so slightly ajar. I walked over there with a bad feeling. When I opened the door fully, it was very dark in there. But then I saw movement. Within seconds, I saw a man emerge from behind a box. The guy got up and then ran past me and out of the room. I was shocked. I watched him then run down the hallways into the mall. I walked out there and then radioed into security about it. Luckily, we had extra security for that day, and they were all at the other end of the mall mainly. The man was running around the mall trying to find another place to hide, but security was able to locate him, thankfully. He got kicked out, and it turns out that he was there early for the Black Friday sales. It's unknown how the man got in, but he was trying to be the first person there. Hours later, the mall opened, and people went crazy shopping. It was the busiest that I had ever seen the place. Thankfully, nothing that crazy happened the rest of my time working there. I used to work at a sporting goods store. This is something that happened just a few years ago. Our store is pretty large, and Black Friday is one of the busiest days of the year for us. The only other day that compares is probably the Saturday before Christmas. For Black Friday on this year, I was working as well as pretty much everyone else on staff. We would even hire extra people for seasonal work each year. I typically moved around the store organizing things and also helping customers. In my time there, I had worked in all departments and knew the entire store very well. It was always a lot of work during Thanksgiving and Christmas time, but it was also fun. There was lots of customers, and I would end up making a good amount of money with all the hours that I got. On this year for Black Friday, I was working a long shift. We opened our doors at 6 a.m., and I was working from 5:30 to 3:30, a 10-hour shift. When we opened, there was a lot of customers. It really wasn't too crazy though. I was kept busy right away. People were all over, and I helped a lot of them, showing them where things were and telling them the sales. I also was kept busy cleaning and reorganizing things from the rush of customers. The first 5 hours really flew by. The next thing I knew, it was the late morning. Things sort of calmed down a little bit, but were still busy. I remember that I was in the back of the store working when I got called up to customer service by one of the store managers. I went up and there was a cop there, which seemed odd. I thought that maybe there was a shoplifting incident or something. My manager, as well as the cop, said that they were briefing people about a situation. I learned that a nearby store had been robbed at gunpoint early in the morning. The suspect fled, but it was possible that he was still in the area. I hadn't heard about it at all, and I hadn't seen any police or anything yet. They said they were keeping it quiet and only telling the employees or something like that. It sounded like it was more than likely the guy was long gone by now, but they just wanted us to beware. There was a chance that he was hiding in plain sight. I was shown a picture of the guy that was taken by a surveillance camera. It was a really clear photo for it being surveillance. The guy wasn't wearing a mask or anything, and I said that I would keep an eye out. Obviously, I never thought that anything would come of it. I went back to work after that and quickly forgot about the guy. I was pretty busy with the store still having lots of customers and stuff. Several hours later, and just a couple more hours until I was off, I was now working at the front of the store. I was kind of near the entrance doors. The store was a little bit less busy now. As I was standing there, I heard the automatic doors start to slide open, and I glanced over to see a customer entering the store. I was going to say hi like I would to any customer coming in if I happened to be working by the doors. As soon as I saw the person entering, though, my jaw dropped. It was the same guy who I had seen a picture of who was wanted by the cops. I hadn't even been thinking about it and had completely forgot, but now that I was seeing him, it instantly jogged my memory. I couldn't believe it. When the guy walked in, we locked eyes. He must have seen the look on my face. As soon as he was about to take a step inside, he stopped. Then he turned around and walked out. I quickly ran and found a manager and reported that I saw the guy. The cops got called back to the store, but the guy was gone by then. They looked around without success. I realized that the guy must have noticed that I recognized him and then left. I'm not sure why he was entering our store. Was it to buy something normally? Or could it have been to rob us? Either way, I'm glad that he left. A few days later, he did end up being caught by police. It was a surprise that he stayed in the area. That was a Black Friday memory that I will never forget. This happened on Black Friday in 2004. It had been a great Thanksgiving, and I was hoping to have a great Black Friday with my wife. We got up early to go Black Friday shopping at all the stores. First, we went to Walmart, and things got off to an interesting start. We got there shortly after they opened, which was around 6 a.m. I think. There were some things that we were hoping to get, but I wasn't depending on it. I knew that things can get crazy, so if we missed out, it wasn't a big deal. Obviously, the store was busy. My wife and I tried to go through the large crowd towards electronics, where all the action was. Most people were there trying to get some type of TV, video game, phone, or computer, and I was no different. I was hoping for a new TV, and so we walked back there as fast as we could. By the time we got there, the scene was even crazier than I expected, and I had expected it to be wild. There were people everywhere, and some were actually fighting over stuff. I went over to the TVs with my wife. I saw that there were a couple left of the kind that I wanted. As I was walking over, I saw somebody grab one. Now there was just one left. I hurried to go faster now, and I heard my wife say, "Go for it." So I did not run, but I speed walked over to the last television set. When I got there, I was just about to reach out and grab it when this guy came flying in out of nowhere. He ran into me and completely knocked me over onto the ground because he hit me at an angle where I didn't see him at all. Because I had not seen him coming, I fell and the man tripped over me, and then he fell to the ground as well. We were both on the ground and the guy quickly got up. But when he did, I guess someone else took the last TV. I had no idea because I didn't see it as I was still on the floor. The next thing I knew, my wife came over to me and asked if I was okay. I was fine and I stood back up. All of a sudden, the guy came back over to me who had ran into me and got in my face. He said that I had tripped him. I told him that I never saw him coming and said that he knocked me over. He said that because of me, he didn't get the last TV. I asked him where it went, and he said some other guy took it. This angered me because I had wanted it too, but I also knew that it wasn't my fault. I said he shouldn't have ran me over, and I was glad that he didn't get the TV. Well, that really ticked the guy off, and he started cursing at me. My wife said we should go, sensing things were heating up in the argument. I decided that it would be best to just back away, so I turned and left. The man wasn't happy with this though. He started to follow us, still cursing at me. I wanted badly to turn around and punch him in the face, but I knew that that would only make things worse, so I just ignored him. Eventually, we were able to get away from him and blend back in with the crowd. We shopped around the store and soon found some other things to buy. After being in the store for a while, my wife and I went up and checked out. Then we left and headed to another store. I remember that several hours later, we were at this type of furniture store. My wife and I were looking at the items when my cell phone rang. I didn't have caller ID, as cell phones were much different back then. I answered it and heard somebody who I didn't immediately recognize. It was a man, and he was very angry. Soon, though, I realized that it was the same guy who I had gotten into it with at Walmart. This blew my mind, as I had no idea how he got my phone number. He was just harassing me and cursing at me more. He said that he wanted to talk to me and asked me where I was. I told him to leave me alone, and he asked me when I was going home. He then said that he was going to get me back. But right in the middle of him saying that, I hung up the phone. He immediately tried calling me again, but I didn't answer. He kept trying to call, I'm sure, because my phone kept ringing, so I just turned it off. I kept wondering how he got my number, though. My wife and I continued shopping. Eventually, we were done for the day and went back home. Things were good then, and I turned my phone back on. The guy didn't call. However, that night, when it was pretty late, there was a knock on our front door. This seemed odd right away, but I didn't know who it was. I went to a window and looked out and saw that same guy. He started loudly banging on the door and yelling at me to answer. Then he tried opening it a few times. I didn't know what this guy was capable of, but now that he was at my house, I wasn't going to back down. I went over to the front door against my wife's wishes and stormed out. I started yelling at the guy to get off my property, and he was still cursing at me. Instantly, when I got in his face, he took a swing at me and partly hit me. I shoved him back, and he tried to push me to the ground. I ran towards him and tackled him, and we both went down. Then we were just kind of rolling around swinging at each other for a while. Eventually, the guy pulled himself away and got up. I got up as well and thought that we were going for round 2, but instead the guy walked off to his car in the street and then left. We didn't call the cops or anything, and he was gone. Then I went inside and my wife showed me how to block his phone number. After that, I never heard from him or saw him again. It was a crazy thing. I still don't know how he got my number or how he got my address. It's possible that he followed me, but I hadn't noticed, because when I checked out at Walmart, I do think I gave them my phone number. But then again, the guy would have had to be within feet of us, and he also would have had to follow us to get to our house. The store was busy, but I think I would have noticed. It remains a mystery to me to this day.
This is something that happened years ago. On that year in particular, I remember that many stores were opening their doors right at midnight on Black Friday. Normally, I was not one to camp out and wait in line, but on that year in particular, I decided to. For a few days leading up to Thanksgiving, I'd been talking with my friend Sam about it. He really wanted to because there were some great deals at some stores, Best Buy in particular. So by Thanksgiving, we ended up deciding that we would. After the Thanksgiving get-togethers with our families, we both met up at about 9 p.m., a whole 3 hours before the doors opened. We went to the shopping center near where we lived, which had just about every major store in the area. After Sam and I arrived at Best Buy, there were already some people in line, but not too many. I would say maybe 50 people or so in front of us. Sam brought some folding chairs for us to sit in, and then we just waited and talked. It got cold sitting out there, but people soon got in line behind us, and by 11:30 at night there were probably at least 100 people behind us. The main thing that I was hoping to get was a laptop, and Sam was getting one as well, but Sam also wanted to buy a TV, because they had one that was on sale for a really great deal. So eventually, it was midnight, and we heard cheering from up front in the line, and we saw the doors open up. Things were pretty civil, and people rushed inside, but at a fast walk. Nobody was sprinting or knocking each other over or anything. We made it inside quickly, and then went straight for the laptops. Personally, I didn't realize how much everyone was trying to buy these same laptops that I wanted to get. I knew they were a great deal, but I figured that they would probably be available for several hours at least. However, when we got to the laptops, Sam grabbed one and I did the same. I then saw many other people crowded around and start taking them. I realized how lucky we were to have gotten there when we did. So I took my laptop and Sam took his, and we started heading over to the TVs where Sam would get one. The store by this point was completely crowded with a ton of people, and it was only getting busier. As Sam and I made our way to the TVs and were about halfway there, I remember somebody tried grabbing my laptop. I had been holding it in my right hand and did not have a very secure grasp on it. I felt somebody come up right behind me and then tug on it. I almost let go, but thankfully I didn't, and I quickly turned and grabbed it with my other hand as well. There was a brief tug-of-war contest that lasted for about 2 seconds, and I maintained control of the laptop. I looked, and I saw this shorter man with dark hair who was the guy who had tried grabbing it, but after letting go, he turned around and quickly went back into the crowd and out of my sight. I didn't get a real good look at him. I was glad that I still had the laptop, so I turned and now held it like a football, securing my arm around it. I hurried to catch up with Sam, who didn't realize what had happened. Soon we both arrived at the TVs, and Sam was also able to get one of them before they sold out. Then we started making our way back through the crowd up to the check lanes. Obviously, this would take longer than usual. I tried to hold on tight to the laptop. Well, almost halfway up to the check lanes, I felt somebody try grabbing it again. The back part of the box was exposed, and that's what they tried pulling on. This time, the tug from behind was much harder and forceful. Fortunately, I had a pretty good grip on it, and I still almost let go of it, but I didn't. I then quickly turned around and I saw that it was the same guy. He was standing right there in the crowd. I remember that he looked angry for a moment, and then he started laughing, almost as if to say he was just messing with me. But I knew that he wasn't. I knew he was really trying to take the laptop from me. But after that, he quickly turned around and blended in with the crowd again. There were so many other people around, I'm not even sure if anyone else noticed. But when I turned back, I saw that Sam had seen it, at least part of it. He asked me if that guy had tried taking my laptop. I said yes, and told him how he had tried to take it before as well. We guarded our items defensively and made the rest of the way up to the checkouts. If somebody had been able to take our items from us before we checked out, it wasn't stealing because they weren't paid for yet. So if they were able to take it, they could just walk up and then buy it instead of us buying it. And the store was so busy that even if we found an employee to complain about it, there's a chance that they wouldn't be able to do anything. So thankfully, we got to the checkout line and it moved pretty quickly. We were able to buy the items, and after paying for them, we left the store. In the parking lot, people were still walking in and out, but I had parked in the back and it was pretty quiet over there. As we walked past the cars through the parking lot, I remember that I was talking with Sam about what happened in more detail. As I did, I turned around and I saw the same guy now leaving the store and walking in our direction. He did not have anything in his hands, such as a bag from the store or an item that he bought. I told Sam that was him, and after seeing the guy quickly leaving the store, we decided to walk faster to make it to the car. Like I said, we were way in the back of the parking lot. So we started walking fast, and a few moments later, I looked back again. The guy was still heading towards us. Maybe he was just also going to his car and happened to park by us, but I didn't want to take the chance. Soon we were able to make it to my car, and there were a few open parking spaces around us because we were literally in the far back corner. After we put our items in the back seat, we went around and got into the front. I was driving, and after closing my door and locking it, I saw in the mirror the man now reaching my vehicle. He walked behind it, but did not go past it. He just kind of stopped right there. We could not leave until he moved out of the way. I remember Sam asking what the guy was doing. I had no idea. He continued to just stand there for at least over a minute. He wasn't really looking at us, but just kind of casually standing around, just a few feet from the back of my car. Then he turned and did start looking at us for a few moments. Sam rolled down his window slightly and asked the man what was going on. The man then turned and started walking around to Sam at the passenger's window. Before he got there though, he tried opening the back door to the car really quickly. Now that he was no longer blocking my way to back up, as he was reaching Sam at the front passenger side, I hit the gas and reversed out of the spot. We left the guy standing there near our parking space. After that, we left the parking lot and got out of there. We went to a couple more stores briefly and then made it back to our homes safely. Looking back, that was the craziest experience I've ever had on Black Friday. I really don't know why that guy kept trying to take my laptop. Possibly he had tried taking laptops from multiple people is my guess, but when he followed us out to the parking lot, it was really strange. Many years ago, I used to work at an electronics store that would get really busy on Black Friday. For most of the year, the store would not be very busy at all. It was a smaller place, and many of them were in malls. Our location was not inside of a mall, but was part of a strip mall. So most of the time, we would really only have 1 or 2 employees working and wouldn't get that many customers at once. There were a few days though where we needed more, such as certain weekend sales, the Christmas season, and of course, Black Friday. We opened that year on Black Friday very early in the morning. I don't recall if it was 5 a.m., 6, or 7, but it was earlier than usual. I was opening the store along with 3 other employees. The setup of the store was basically items all along the walls, with a few display tables and more things for sale on them. There was also a couple of shelves, but not very many. Then we had our employee desk that had just 2 registers on it, and then there was a small backroom area in the store as well. We had put up a line divider thing to make there be an organized line of people waiting to check out, and then we had both registers open. The other 2 employees would be out in the store, helping customers and doing whatever else was needed, as the other 2 rang people up. When we opened, we got a lot of customers pretty much right away. Our store was having a major sale. The crowds were not overwhelming, but were significant. For the first couple of hours, I was one of the employees working at the register and checking out customers. Then I was assigned to help customers inside of the store. The time went by really fast because I was kept pretty busy. I remember that at one point though, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a man walking into our back room. That space was for employees only, and normally the door was always locked, but it must have been left unlocked because this guy had just walked right in. I made my way over there to tell the guy that he couldn't be back there, but it took a little bit longer than usual because of how crowded the store was. I soon got back there though and entered the back room. It was a very small area but kind of cluttered. There were 2 doors leading to the store, one that I had just walked through and the other leading to behind the desk where the employees were. There was also an exit door that led out to the back of the building. After entering the back room, I did not see the guy anywhere. I was confused at first, and I called out asking if anybody was there. After getting no response, I figured that the guy must have left out the back door. That made me worried that he might have stole some stuff. I looked around and did not see anything that was obviously stolen from the back though, so I went back out into the store and was going to try to find out if anything was stolen there. I found another employee, and I told my coworker Jeff about what had happened. He told me that I should go into the back room and check to make sure nothing was stolen, and he would make sure nothing was stolen from the sales floor. So I started to make my way over there, and that's when I saw the back door opening again. The same man started to walk out, but then he noticed me and he went back in the room and closed the door. I walked as fast as I could through the crowd to get back over to the room again. I was able to make it within about a minute and get inside, but when I did, once more I didn't see the guy in there. I called out again and once more got no response. I could not figure out where this guy was hiding or if he had left the store. I started to look around and check if anything was stolen. I went to the far end of the narrow back room and began looking at the items there. As I was doing so, I suddenly felt that somebody was behind me. I turned around to see the man standing there, now slowly walking towards me. I had no idea where he came from. He was a big guy, larger than me, and his face was nearly expressionless. I was concerned and did not know what he wanted. Seeing him back there totally took me by surprise. After a few moments, the only words I could get out were, "What are you doing back here?" He did not say anything, but kept walking towards me. Just then, the other door to the back opened, the one that led from behind the counter. My coworker Jeff was there, and he called out telling the man that he could not be in the back room. The man saw him, stopped for a moment, and then bolted for the back door. He ran out and left the building completely. I was glad that he was finally gone. He also did not appear to have stolen anything. We went over and checked, and nothing was missing. We also realized that the man must have been hiding behind some boxes that were back there. I had never looked in that particular area. I really don't know what that man's intentions were, but it was very creepy to say the least. This happened back in 2007. My husband and I were planning on going Black Friday shopping that year. We had a normal Thanksgiving, but then we got up really early the next morning at 4:30 a.m. There were a few things that I was interested in getting, and I had read the advertisements and saw that there were a lot of good deals. We were going to several different stores, but we would be starting at Walmart. We got there a little bit after 5 o'clock in the morning, and it was insanely busy. Firstly, the only available parking spaces were at the far back of the parking lot. Then, when we got inside of the store, it was the busiest that I had ever seen a store in my entire life. You could hardly walk anywhere at all because there were so many people around. My husband and I started to make our way through the store, but it was impossible to walk anywhere without people bumping into you left and right. Within probably 5 minutes of being inside, we were not even halfway to the back of the store yet, and around then, I ended up getting separated from my husband. The mob of people basically swallowed us both, forcing us into different directions. I tried looking around for my husband, but I couldn't figure out which direction he was in. For a little while, I tried going forward, but did not have any luck. I decided at that point to leave the store and try to call my husband on my cell phone. I was much closer to the doors to exit anyways, so I turned around and started going against the grain. I slowly walked through the mob of people, and within several minutes was able to find the doors. Then I got outside of the Walmart, but there were still a bunch of people constantly coming and going from the entrance doors, so I figured that I would go back to the car and call my husband there. I walked all the way to the back end of the parking lot and reached our vehicle, but I then realized that I did not have the keys. My husband had them, and obviously the car was locked. So instead, I just stood by it, where it was finally quiet and not filled with people. I could actually hear myself think, and I took out my cell phone. I saw that my husband had tried to call me. I must not have heard it ringing or felt it vibrating because of being stuck in the large mob of people. So I tried to call him back, but he did not answer. He probably was stuck inside the mob and didn't even notice the call. I figured that he would think to come out of the store like I had, so I decided to wait by our car. It was cool and comfortable outside, and refreshing compared to inside of the crazy mob of Walmart. After being out there just standing around by the car for maybe 5 minutes, I remember I heard a vehicle nearby. I looked over and saw one of those old white Astro vans from the 1990s. It was in rough shape, and the engine was running rather loud. The van slowly made its way from the far back end of the parking lot over to the row of cars that we were parked in. The van started to drive past me very slowly, but then it stopped. I remember that the window then rolled down, and I saw a man with a goatee and a baseball cap was driving it. He said hi to me, and then asked me if I needed a ride. I was already kind of creeped out by him, and I said no thanks. I expected the man to drive away, but he didn't. Instead, the man said, "No, I think you need a ride. Hop in." I said, "No thanks, I'm really good." The man asked me what I was doing out there all alone. At that point, I decided to just go back inside of the Walmart. As crazy of a scene as it was in there, I guess it wasn't that much better out in the parking lot, so I just turned and started walking back for the store. As I walked, the van slowly but loudly started keeping pace with me. The man called out to me several more times, telling me that I should get inside of his car. I just ignored him. Soon, I made it to the front doors, where some other people were around, and I felt better. I remember that the man then turned in his van though, and started to park it along the front side of Walmart by the curb. This was definitely not a parking space. As he parked anyways though, I headed for the doors, but looked back one more time to see the man now getting out of his vehicle. This made me go faster. Soon I rejoined the crazy mob of people, and I was once again brushing shoulders with tons of other shoppers, just trying to make it in. But then I happened to see my husband walking towards me from the other direction. I cut in front of a few people to try to get over to him. It was difficult, but soon we were able to make it back to each other. He was trying to leave the store and go outside. After I found him, we both went towards the exits. Within a couple of minutes, we were able to make it back. Then we left Walmart. When we did, I saw the van still parked out front, but nobody appeared to be inside of it, so the man must have been in the store. I told my husband about the creepy experience with the guy, and we decided to just leave and go to another store instead. I did not see that creepy guy or his van again after that, and I'm not sure if he went inside a Walmart just to go after me or not, but it sure seemed like it. That was one of the craziest Black Fridays that I've ever experienced.